You don't need to contribute to your retirement accounts anymore? This is the Washington Post? Holy crap, holy! The Washington Post says stop worrying about retirement. I can't believe it. So let's take a gander, shall we? Yes, we shall. This is from Jane Bryant Quinn. Look, it says Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness, whatever the hell that means. But okay. Jane Bryant Quinn. How much should you save to retire at your current standard of living? To answer that question, many of us turn to a retirement worksheet or calculator. But they both tend to overestimate what you're really going to need. And so you'll save more than you have to if you follow what they say. Interesting. Retirement calculators usually overestimate how much you'll spend when you retire. They'll take a ballpark number, say 80% of your current income, and project it plus inflation for the rest of your life. Or they might leave out Social Security. So salespeople can prove you need an enormous nest egg, perhaps over $1 million or more. Of course, they'd be happy to invest it for you. Let's keep going. But both these assumptions are unrealistic, says Jane Bryant Quinn. Let's take a look. But older retirees don't spend as much as younger retirees do. They don't have a mortgage anymore, don't travel, buy cars less often, or quit driving entirely, and buy few new clothes. They spend more on Medicare as they age, but not enough to offset the steady drop in the rest of their lives and the rest of their living cost. What? Ken Tachino and Cynthia Salzman, professors at Widener University in Pennsylvania, quantified this change based on the Department of Labor Consumer Expenditure Survey. They found that people 75 and older spent 26% less on average than people 65 to 74. You hearing that? People 75 and older spent 26% less than people 65 to 74. A good rule of thumb is to assume that by 75, you'll spend 20% less in real terms, which is adjusted for inflation, says Salzman. Some older people spend less only because their incomes have dropped, but most appear to cut back voluntarily. Nearly half of all retirees are still adding to their savings after they leave their jobs, quit their crappy jobs. Baby boomers are no different. They have relatively higher housing expenses than their parents did, but otherwise they show no greater propensity to spend, says the professors. And if your spending will be lower than you thought, your savings can be lower too. How much lower depends on the number of years you're planning for. Hey, so say you retire at 65 on 80% of your working income and assume you live another 25 years. By 75 years old, your expenses will probably drop to just 64% of your affordable income before adjusting for inflation. You'll probably have enough money if you provide for retirement income equal to 70% of your working salary instead of 80%. I completely agree. Some financial planners argue that you should save as much as possible to allow for the contingencies. That means spending less money today or working longer. Do you want to cut your current spending to create a larger retirement egg that you might not need? Some of you would, others will say no. Still, you have to save. It's nice to know that smaller things will suffice, but you do have to meet this lower target, or your standard of do not have to meet that that doesn't make sense. You do have to meet this lower target, or your standard of living will drop. Now, so that's very interesting. And we're just going to look. When was this? This article is over 25 years ago, published in September 1999. September 1999. See it right there. September 1999. No more need to feather the nest egg by Jane Bryant Quinn. Interesting. Anyway, I just got this off of X. I'll share with you. Here's my man Andrew Biggs talking about this, a different thing I focused on here. I said the chart below shows average expenditures of American households before taxes of $77,000. And I said, so let me ask you a question. Could it be possible that when you retire and your mortgage is paid off, your expenditures go way down? Think about it. No more 12.4% personal insurance and pensions, that's Social Security tax. Nowhere near 32% spent on housing or 17% spent on transportation, just like what Jane Bryant Quinn was talking about 25 years ago. Maybe your healthcare costs go up, but do they really once you're on Medicare? I mean, it's not like your premiums are cheap now while you're working, are they? And then my man Andrew says, this chart from a paper I did on how children affect household spending shows that health expenditures do increase into retirement, but they're increasing pretty much throughout life. So no one should really be surprised So that's when you're retired. You can see your expenditures go way down, as you can tell right there. You got education, child care, housing. Housing's that one right there. Transportation. You can see it hits about 55 to 56, and it starts going way down. Yep, and that's that's plus spending in other categories. Education, housing, transportation declined by more than the healthcare costs increased. So total housing spending drops by about 14% from ages 70 to 70, 50 to 75. So from 50 to 75, of course, we're talking about 65 to 75, they drop by even more than that. Anyway, we've known this for a long time. I don't know why the financial industry still doesn't there's getting it now. There's finally people are coming to the conclusion, but maybe we don't spend as much as they told us. But is that true? Because that means they don't need as much money to live when they retire. Could that possibly be true? And if so, what does that do for all of our planning scenarios that we put in there? 4% rule and all this stuff. What if that's true? What if they don't need as much money as they said? What if they are able to free themselves from their crappy old job? One just said, I don't want to go out. Now he says, I do want to go out. I do. Yeah, I know. Anyway, I just thought you'd get a chuckle out of that. Going back to 1999, we've been talking about the same thing. And yet it never really took full throttle into the industry until about 5-6 years ago. And even now, it's still lacking in terms of the actual amount of people that should be paying attention to this. They just don't. Anyway, love your thoughts. God bless. Smash that like button. We'll see you.